Wilson Airport. Detectives from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations reportedly raided his premises at Wilson on Friday, but were unable to find him. Sources close to the investigation say the probe has narrowed down to 6 suspected masterminds of the fake gold scandal that involves the Dubai royal family. It is alleged that operatives within the fake gold syndicate told the United Arab Emirates royal family representative that the consignment would leave the Democratic Republic of Congo bearing United Nations stamps for easier entry into Kenya. It has also emerged that the cargo bearing large quantities of gold was to arrive at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport via Uganda before reaching its final destination in the UAE. The Directorate of Criminal Investigations has less than a week to complete its investigations and forward its finding to the Director of Public Prosecution, Nurdin Haji, who will either prefer or drop charges against 16 suspects arrested so far, including businessman Jared Otieno. In a statement, the DPP asked Inspector General of Police Hilary Mutyambai to fast-track investigations that have taken on a political dimension. Kakamega Senator Moses Wetangula, who has also been linked to the scam, is said to be away in Hong Kong on official duty. Politician Zahir Janda, whose name featured prominently in the scandal, denied his involvement and is yet to be questioned. The court ordered that 16 who had been arrested be detained for 7 days to allow more time for investigations. They will be presented in court again this week. Seth Olale, NTV.
And still on the fake gold scam, which is the new front line in the political battle between Deputy President William Ruto, his supporters and those of ODM leader Raila Odinga, Ruto and his allies yesterday hit out at Odinga, saying he had sold the country's names over name over the involvement of the gold scam. Now Odinga's allies, however, hit back, saying leaders should leave him out of it as he is not involved.
Deputy President William Ruto, who was in the company of several leaders, was in Bumula constituency, where he sustained his assault on ODM leader Raila Odinga, who has been dragged into the fake gold scam. He spoke at a church service at Mwanda Catholic Church before presiding over a fundraiser for several women groups at Mwanda Primary School.
Wakatuambia hapo katikati ati wataenda Canaan yenyewe ikawa ya bandia. Saa hii ati wanauza gold, hiyo gold pia ni ya bandia. Sasa hawa watu tunawajua, hata hakuna haja ya kusumbuana na watu. Watu wanajua ni nani watu wa kuendesha, ni nani conman.
Tunataka TPP, tunataka DCI, bila uoga, bila upendeleo yoyote. Wawe tunataka kuona kesho ama kesho kutwa wale walienda kuiba pesa huko Uarabuni kwamba wanapeleka gold ya uongo, wao wamewekwa pingo.
Vile polisi wanawakamata hapa Mwanda wale vijana ambao wamekunywa busa ya kutemeza damu mwilini, vile wamekamata Raila Odinga kwa kuuza fake gold.
Raila Odinga alikuwa na Moi, akajaribu kunyang'anya serikali ya Moi na kifua, hakuweza. Raila Odinga akakuja akangangana na Kibaki, akafuruka huyo mzee miaka 10.
But Odinga's allies, led by Homa Bay Women Rep Gladys Wanga, asked politicians to leave the ODM leader out of it.
Wameanza sasa kuleta jina ya Raila Odinga, jina ya president na jina ya CS Matiang'i katika hili jambo la dhahabu ama fake gold. Tunataka kuambia kwamba Wakenya wanaweza soma na wanaweza ona.
The leaders called for investigations into the fake gold scam, even as they rallied behind the DP's 2022 bid.
And I know Wetangula will run for president. He has told me. Mudavadi will run for president. He has told me. Lakini nikawaambia kabla tuende huko tutafute njia. It is not enough to want to go to Nairobi when you don't know how you're going to go there.
Zakius Masame, NTV, Bungoma.
And in the meantime, members of parliament opposed to the DP's presidential ambition have also hit out at him, linking the ODM leader Raila Odinga to the fake gold scam. They also say his defense of the president is the fake gold investigation was insincere.
Hivi fake gold, wale DPP na DCI wafanye kazi yao. Lakini wewe ambao ni wakili wa Waitito, na wewe vile vile ni wakili wa governor wa Turukana huko, na wewe ni wakili wa governor wa Migori, wacha kuwa wakili wa Uhuru wa mambo hii. Yeye hajatuma wewe. President wetu ana mdomo. Kama ametajwa mahali si ana mdomo, yeye mwenyewe atajisemea.
Uchunguzi ufanywe wa kina. Wale ambao wameuzika hatua ichukuliwe. Lakini wasiende kujificha mgongo ya rais. Uhuru anajua kujitetea mwenyewe.
Tuliitwa na Uhuru Kenyatta State House. Everybody who was elected on Jubilee, senators, members of parliament, we were called to State House. And he told us vitu kadhaa. Lakini ile kitu ilikuwa ya muhimu. Alituuliza kama viongozi wa Jubilee tumpatie miaka 4, tufanyie Wakenya kazi miaka 4.
Very interesting indeed. And as I said, we are discussing issues of adoption this morning. And for tens of thousands of children who, for one reason or another, do not have the privilege of growing up in a biological family setup, placement in alternative family care gives them an opportunity to live a normal life. Such was the case of 2 minors, one who was placed with an American couple and another with a Kenyan couple. But after years of custody battles in and out of the courts, the government has withdrawn these 2 minors from their alternative families. Why did the government take them back? NTV's investigate has been following the cases and now reveals the gaps in the adoption laws and systems marked by irregularities and insincerity at every step, where police, the children's department, the judiciary, lawyers and children's homes flout the provision of the Children's Act on alternative care. Here's NTV Investigates reporter Edmond Yabola with the first part of the special.
We have received a tip-off about a rescue operation by the DCI Child Protection Unit and the State Department for Social Protection involving a 3-year-old boy who is under the custody, guardianship of an American couple. Now the DCI detectives are going to take back the child, and we are trailing them right now to understand what this is about.
The detectives have allowed us to film on condition that we conceal their identity.
Hi. Good. What's going on? What is up, guys? Sorry. No, where are you coming in? Excuse me, what is it? Why are you here? You're not going anywhere. Mother. Absolutely happy to let you see the child, to do whatever you need to do, but that would come through a court order. That would come from the court saying we have a concern. So if there is a concern and the court has said there's a concern and that's documented, then we will do whatever the court asks us to do.
You don't want to use any force?
Of course.
But whichever way, You want to see the kid.
Of course.
You are going to show the child.
Of course.
Yeah,
Of course.
show the child first.
But why can't we ask our attorney if this is within the law? Why can't we speak to our attorney to see if this is within the law?
We're very happy.
We're willing to cooperate, but I would like to let my attorney know and make sure that he's here to make sure everything that's happening is within the law.
We are talking about someone that is not here. Let us see him.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But you have, but have you, so we have just established that you are the hands and the feet of the court.
While this was going on, notice the authorities forming a ring around the couple.
Excuse me, did you just take him? Yes, you've taken him? Are you kidding me? They've just taken Keanu, they've taken him right now. That's the law. Wait, it is not the law. You have literally taken him. You have literally you're kidnapping a child right now. You are kidnapping a child. Yes, you are going against a court order. She's calling for help because you're literally kidnapping a child.
Bring your passport.
You know, sir, I can't.
Bring your passport. Go bring your passport.
Sir,
Well, sit down and shut up. Okay.
The child had been whisked away. It was so swift that even we missed it.
I want to see your passport.
We trailed the car carrying baby Jonathan, whose real name and identity we have concealed due to the sensitivity of the matter. We find him under the care of government social workers, completely oblivious of what is going on. Only a week before this, the team had carried out another rescue operation within the city. At the center of this was another boy, aged 4.5. Baby Edward, whose real name and identity we have also concealed, is reunited with his parent and grandparents soon after. The anxiety from the events of the day and being around strangers is overwhelming. The mother, Monica Kawira, is overcome by emotion. It's been almost 4 years since she last held her son.
Thank you.
We find the adoptive parents of baby Edward and the guardians of baby Jonathan days after the operations. They are still in shock and distraught from the harrowing experience.
I had some commotion in the house and I went and checked. And there were men and women, and there were 2 men holding guns. So you can imagine my shock. My elder son came, the younger one didn't. So I got worried and I went downstairs looking for him because I kept calling and he wasn't coming. I went outside and that's when I saw there were 3 cars parked outside. In one of the cars, he was inside. He had been bundled in a blanket. And he was looking at me scared, because I know his look when he's scared. And this was 100 times what I've seen before.
It's good. What's going on?
Police officers.
Sorry. No, why are you coming in?
You're coming.
I was shocked when I saw all these people, and I was hugely threatening to see all these people suddenly in your living room. They don't look like police officers. They've got head coverings, the women are wearing scarves, some of the men are wearing hats and visors, and they're not telling us who they are and what they want. They're just telling us to sit down. And I said to them, I need to call my attorney. And they said, you're not calling anyone, sit down.
NTV Investigates set out on a fact-finding mission on what exactly transpired in the cases of baby Jonathan and Edward. Kiambu town, 16 kilometers from the capital. The police station is our first stop in the search of records pointing to the origin of baby Jonathan. We find OB number 16 of 12th January 2016, which reads, the Kirigiti Assistant Chief Stanley Gikwa phone number reported on 12th January 2016 that he was called by a Good Samaritan to report a case of child abandonment inside Rowe Forest. We find the assistant chief who directs us to the location of the abandonment.
It was in this bush. They were wrapped in a green polythene bag.
The two of them?
The two of them.
Were they clothed?
They were not clothed.
Okay.
But the one who was under had bruises on his arm. Okay. Yes, we found them and we talked to the ladies who gave towels, and they were wrapped in them, and from there I handed them to the police officers in the company of 2 area ladies.
Okay. What, in your assessment, was the age approximately? How old were they at the time they were found?
I think it was 1 day old.
Baby Jonathan survived, but his twin brother did not.
Upon the release of the child from the Kiambu District Hospital in early February or January 2016 thereabout, the child was committed to this children's home referred to as John Pity Children's Home by the Kiambu Children's Department. Now, it is also on record that a woman by the name Gathoni Hamilton Kirima would come here and take the child from the home and take him home with her, and that this woman is actually related to Daisy Machonchini, and that Daisy got to know about the child around the same time this was happening. And therefore, the Children's Department in Kiambu got concerned about the manner in which the child was being taken from this children's home to a different home without official documentation, without an official custody arrangement. This children's officer by the name Rachel filed a petition in court seeking that the child be taken from this home and be committed to a different home for the sake of his safety, coming from those concerns.
Details are scanty on how Bishop Gathoni Kirima often took the child from Jean Petit home and how, together with Daisy, they related with the child. This PNC Order 66 from the Kiambu Court, dated 18th November 2016, committed baby Jonathan to Mogra Children's Home in Kasarani Sub-County for a period of 6 months. Back to baby Edward. 18th May 2014 in Kibera, Soweto. A woman by the name Monica Kawira is arrested alongside her 1-week-old baby and taken to the high-rise AP camp on a suspected case of child neglect. She and her child are later brought to Kilimani Police Station and placed in custody. Here we find 2 OB reports concerning Monica and her child. OB 91 of 18th May 2014 reads, Monica Kawira Kinoti is escorted from high-rise AP camp for the offense of child neglect after she was arrested by one Agnes, assisted by the public, all now placed in cells while appearing fit. Another OB, number 45, recorded on 19th May 2019, reads, I, Police Constable Pauline Tundu, do now hand over a child 2 weeks old whose mother is in custody under the instruction of Inspector Mambo to New Life Home Trust, since the child is in need of care and protection. The mother was still in custody, and that was the last time she saw her child. She would later be charged in court and jailed for 7 months for the offense of child neglect, and baby Edward offered for adoption. We find Kawira on the day of her reunion with her child on March 30th, 2019. Her accounts of the arrest refutes the police's accusation of neglect.
Polisi walikutoa wapi? Kwa nyumba yangu niliambiwa nifungue juu nilikuwa nimemwacha kidogo niende ninunue dawa.
Kwa hivyo hizo sekunde ndogo za kwenda kununua dawa ndio
wamama walifahamia. Fungua, toa mtoto. Mmoja akachukua wakanipeleka. Saa kwenda station nikapewa mtoto. Kulala hiyo siku, kesho yake wakachukua. Halafu nikapelekwa Lang'ata. Sasa kutoka Lang'ata si ndio sasa nilipatana na hiyo maneno. Sijarudishiwa mtoto, nimeenda kotini. Nikiuliza naambiwa hakuna mtoto, huwezi kosa kuendelea na hiyo kesi sababu ya mtoto. Sasa ikakaa hivyo mpaka nikaachiliwa, nikafungwa under probation. Nikakuja nyumbani.
And just like that, Monica Kawira had lost a second child on charges of neglect and abandonment. Another of baby Edward's 7 siblings, also in this video, had been offered for adoption by the same institutions that handled baby Edward. The child was to be adopted by a foreign couple who later opted out upon realizing that the parents existed and wanted their child back. This was despite being allowed to adopt by the court. Back to baby Jonathan at Mogra Children's Home. We find John and Hannah Njoroge, the founders and directors, and Simon Karugu, the operations manager.
So we are following up on this case about the baby who was put under...
They pull out all their documentation regarding the minor. Daisy's interest in the child, they say, did not end at John Petit. She followed him here, having had a special attachment to him.
So initially, after admitting the kid here, and after the kid getting sick and being admitted to Gertrude, and we asked for the medical history, she really helped us. And of course, the kid was admitted in the hospital. And after being admitted in the hospital, she paid for the bill, which was amounting to 1.5 million. And so she started volunteering in the institution. So that's the moment she knew where the kid was. So after some time I cannot be able to confirm for now, she came and told us it's good for her to stay with the kid so that she can be able to do, if there's an emergency, she can rush her to hospital, that is Gertrude. We said we can give out the kid to Daisy, she can stay with the kid with accompaniment of our social worker. With time, she came and reported to us, she told us her husband is coming from abroad and now they need a free area in their privacy. So she opted that Sarah, our social worker, should come back to the children's center. So we told her we cannot let the kid go without anyone accompanying on our side. And the children department advised us, that's Mr. Umbasa, that we can give the foster care. So after doing the inspection, we filled the form, and the form initially was filled between Mogra and the senior chief, the area chief, and the children department, of which they are supposed to be signed in triplicate.
What were the provisions of this foster care agreement? How long was it supposed to take? What were the rules of engagement in it?
He was given the foster care for 3 months. But in between, the kid is supposed to be brought in the children's center for monitoring and evaluation. But along the way, after 1 month was over, we started calling Daisy and asking her to bring the kid back. That moment, she did not pick her phone. So we did a mail.
In the email, Mogra writes, just to reiterate the importance of keeping the home in the loop regarding the minor. The child is under your foster, but is committed to Mogra. If anything happens, it is us who will be held responsible. To which Daisy responded, so sorry for the delay. I have been very busy with a visitor. I will get back to you this weekend. After a few exchanges, Daisy told Mogra to engage her lawyer instead. Then she went quiet.
We go to the Children Protection Unit, which is in South B. And there we met Madam Grace, who was assigned as some officers, was Madam Evelyn and Madam Margaret, and we did our statement. They realized that Daisy is not in Nairobi, because we had already gone to Daisy's place when we were reporting, and we saw that we were told she had vacated, or she's no longer there. So they told us the best thing we can do, we can look for the signal, the number we gave. And they realized that this signal is being found in Diani. So we decided on a coming day, we should be traveling to Mombasa, to Ukunda, so that we can be able to rescue the kid. Fortunately or unfortunately, before the day came, they told us the signal has shifted. Now it is being seen around Kiuna, Westgate. How she handled the foster care makes us raise more alarm, because if you need to bring the kid after 1 month, and then after 1 month you don't pick the phone call, and you need to say we need to talk with your lawyer, we did not engage through your lawyer. We engaged through the children officer of who acts on behalf of Director of Children Services.
While all this was going on, Daisy had filed an application to the Children's Court on 22nd February 2017 seeking legal guardianship of baby Jonathan. But in the application, Daisy and her new lawyer, Danstan Omari, listed Jean Petit and Gadhoni Kirima as respondents, ignoring Mogra despite the fact that the children's home had legal custody at the time. A day later, Senior Resident Magistrate M.A. Utindo granted the orders appointing Daisy as interim guardian.
Considering we were the legal custody, we decided to do an appeal, probably to be enjoined in this ongoing, because this was an interim case, so that we can be enjoined to be an interested party, having the custodian being given by the court that we are the one having the commit of the child.
Mogra's appeal would later be thrown out and a restraining order issued against them. Daisy's husband, Matthew Sean Matsonchini, arrived in the country in March of 2017. Around the same time, the couple was preparing to apply for full guardianship. On March 13, 2017, the couple was back in court, Matthew filing an affidavit seeking full parental responsibility of the minor. 2 days later, their lawyer Omari filed an application asking the court to move with speed. The children's officer's report has been filed in court, he wrote. The children's officer's report is a crucial document in granting alternative family care. It is done by children's officers to ascertain the fitness of the prospective adoptive parents or guardians. But it is this report, dated 2nd March 2017 and admitted in court on 15th March, that has raised even more questions. First, it acknowledges Mogra as having custody of the child, but states that the child was committed there in 1998, but somehow, at the time of the application in 2017, the minor was only 1 year and 2 months old. With this acknowledgement of custody at Mogra, the report ought to have been written by the Kasarani Sub-County Office, under whose jurisdiction Mogra falls, and not Kiambu. The report is written and signed by one Pauline Muya, supposedly a children's officer in Kiambu. NTV Investigates can authoritatively confirm that this individual has never been stationed at the Kiambu Sub-County Office. We have since established that she was in Limuru at the time, but is currently stationed at the head office. Notice how the signature appears to have been superimposed. Mogra would later write to Kiambu Children's Office asking if the report came from them. There was no response. Based on that report, which has since gone missing in the court records and other submissions, the same magistrate M.A. Utindo appointed Matthew and Daisy Matsonchini legal guardians of baby Jonathan on 4th of April 2017. Back to baby Edward. He stayed at New Life Home Trust for 7 months. In December 2014, he was declared free for adoption. It is a process that was aided by what appears to be deliberately inaccurate correspondence between the police, New Life Home Trust and Little Angels Network, the adoption society that placed the minor to the Kenyan couple. Section 159(1)(a) of the Children's Act dictates that abandonment may be presumed if the child appears to have been abandoned at birth and if the institution having care of the child has not seen or heard from the parent or guardian for at least 6 months. In this police letter to New Life Home Trust, signed by Inspector Lydia Mambo on behalf of the OCS Kilimani, dated 19th May 2014, she writes, "The above-named boy was found abandoned at Kibera, Soweto and rescued by a Good Samaritan who reported to Kilimani Police Station via OB 91-1805-2014. Kindly continue giving care as we carry out investigations into the whereabouts of the mother." 6 months later, on 21st November 2014, OCS Bernard Kenyatta wrote another letter. The above-named baby was found by a Good Samaritan at Kibera, Soweto, who reported to Kilimani Police Station via OB 91-1805-2014. Efforts to trace the parents have proved fruitless and no claims have been made to date. May you accord the child the best he deserves. These letters appear to have been crafted to meet the above legal requirements, subsequently leading to the declaration of baby Edward free for adoption. Only they were inaccurate. The baby was not abandoned, rather was in the company of the mother when she was arrested, and the police officers knew only too well her whereabouts. After 2 years of a court battle between Kawira against the adoptive parents, New Life Home Trust and Little Angels Network, in which her fitness and the best interest of the child were raised, the court ruled in favor of the respondents, granting Charles Omanga and Washeke Nduati legal adoption of baby Edward. But a day later, the Child Welfare Society of Kenya, which was enjoined in the case as an interested party, sponsored a petition to a lower court by baby Edward's grandfather Mngiti Mutiga and Kawira as the respondent, but without the legal adoptive parents. The grandfather, Mutiga, wanted guardianship of the baby. Their prayers were granted in record time. The minor would be taken back by the state a year after that order and reunited with the grandparents.
Right, court to court. We'll not be able to play the second part at this hour, but my guests already in studio, just getting a feel of that feature yesterday. It seems a lot of things went wrong, or rather a lot of things escaped the minds of the adopters and adoptees, and we want to put this to perspective. So joining me in studio this morning is Pauline Muhanda, who is an advocate of the High Court. We have Samuel Gishingi, also an advocate, and we have Penelope Wanjiku from the Child Welfare Society. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for joining us. First off, I'd like just your comments, because a lot of people watching that are thinking, what could possibly have gone wrong with these two adoptions? So let me begin with you, Wanjiku. Watching the feature, watch the 45 minutes. What went wrong?
Thank you for having me. I would look at it from a broader perspective, that it's important to undertake family tracing and unification for all cases of children, because maybe if that had been done, a lot of the issues that you're seeing would have been unearthed and would have been able to find the families, the biological families of these children.
Okay, so you think that did not happen? But in the first case, it was clear case of abandonment, right? It was so clear. The second case, perhaps you could argue, but the first case, it was clear. Abandonment, taken to the children's home, and then put out there for adoption and adopted.
Family tracing and reunification should happen in all cases of children, regardless of whether the child is abandoned or orphaned or whichever other category the child finds themselves in.
Okay.
So either way, even if it was abandonment, then if family tracing had been done, we would have then not found the families. But had it been done comprehensively, then we would have found who the parents are.
And it's possible to do a comprehensive tracing?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Of course, maybe also involving other stakeholders like the chiefs, the police, and other people who are involved in matters of children.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm itching to ask you, what if there is no complainant? What if there is no family saying that the child got lost, or someone gave birth and they can't see the child, you know? What if? But let me ask Gishili, having watched the feature, what comes into your mind? What could have possibly gone wrong?
My experience, because I've been representing parents who have lost children through the system, is that there's a possibility, and there are very many parents out there who abandon their children immediately after birth or even later, because of various reasons. That is, and those children perhaps end up being adopted. There is a second scenario where, because in this country, for every child who is available for adoption, there are 6 Kenyans who are queuing to adopt that particular child. The institutions, right from the police, the children homes, the adoption societies, the courts, the lawyers, some of them have actually formed cartels. And since the demand is more than the supply of the children who are required for adoption, parents have been losing children through theft, switching in hospitals. And sometimes I don't want to say that this is what happened in the first particular case. before investigations are actually concluded, it is difficult to say that really the child was actually abandoned by the mother or the parents. There's a possibility that that was actually just something that was planned. And then somebody comes and says, I found a child. I call me the assistant chief and something like that. But it is true, there are very many parents who abandon the children. Now, just one more issue, Ken. It is very important for our viewers to differentiate between adoption and guardianship. In Kenya currently, from 2014, the government actually banned for inter-country adoptions. It is not going to be possible for a Kenyan child to be adopted by a foreigner. Now, I was watching your program yesterday, and I can tell you this: the lawyers, the adoption societies, the children homes that actually told this it is possible for them to actually get a child and adopt, because the language that I had yesterday was one of adoption. It actually caused disaster for this couple and the child, because it is not going to be possible for a child to go out in adoption with foreigners. It has been stopped by the country. Then the advocates now mislead an innocent couple and tell them, can we use a backdoor way of guardianship and we'll get you this particular kid. So the kid, there's a bonding of the two, okay. and eventually they have to part ways. It is actually a big problem. But I agree, yes, there are people who abandon their children, and there's also the cartels that are actually stealing children. Okay,
before I go to Pauline, looking at the statistics you're giving us, for every child available for adoption, there are 6 Kenyans queuing to adopt that child.
Yes.
Why is it that we have so many children home full? Why do we still have children on the street? Because Kenyans are wondering, why would there be so few children to adopt, and yet we have children's homes that are full with children?
My experience is this. There are very many good directors and managers of children's homes in this country. Very many. Innocent, doing a good job, philanthropic. But we also have very many who have created those institutions for purposes of getting money, therefore purposes of getting money. I have come across situations where parents are convinced, give us your children so that we can educate them. Not necessarily because the parents want to give away the children for adoption, okay. But they want the benefit that comes from a child being at the children's home.
Okay.
I challenge the ministry that is responsible for this to do a proper audit.
Of those institutions. Yes. Pauline, first the feature and then your general view.
I think in the future, it's very important for us to distinguish between, as my learned friend has said, an adoption, a guardianship, and in particularly fostering. We have to understand that in the first scenario, these parents were fostering a child. They were not adopting. So the public should not misled that, or the lawyer maybe, or they were misled to believe that they were adopting a child, but in the real sense, they were fostering. Section 147 of the while adopting, it is a duty of the High Court under Section 154 to deal with the issue of adoption. So it is very important to distinguish between the same, because I think either these parents were misled to believe that they were adopting, while in the real sense they were fostering a child.
How didn't they know? How didn't they know?
Number one, as my learned friend has explained, adoptions in Kenya, international adoptions in Kenya were stopped. There's
also a local parent.
Yes, there is a local parent.
Yeah, who tried to adopt,
and unfortunately for them, again, they could not have known. As an adoption lawyer, when a client comes to my office, I will tell them that I have documentation from the Adoption Society that you have qualified, you have met all the requirements, and I have been presented with documentation that this child has also gone through the proper procedures. And the proper procedures is that either a child was picked, taken to the police station did the investigations and wrote a final letter saying that no person has claimed this particular child, and to that effect, this child can go for adoption. So, truth be told, an adopting parent may not know. He presents himself and says, I want to adopt a child. He does not know, or he or she does not know whether this child has followed the legal procedure. All he or she knows is that we have qualified for an adoption. So to that extent, they may not properly be aware.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
On the second issue of why there are so many children in children's home, I may not confirm the statistics that have been given by my learned friend. However, again, you will find that when parents come to adopt, they have their own specification. It is not the duty of the court or the Children's Society or the Children's Department to impose a particular child on, to impose a particular child on a parent. To that effect, he's saying that if I go to an adoption society and I say I want a 6-month-old child and a girl, you cannot impose on me a 10-year-old child. So to some extent, when children stay so long in a children's home, they grow to an age where a category or majority of parents in Kenya are not willing to take them.
Yes.
Yeah, because again, people want children that are innocent, children that you can nurture them in their own way. But if you look at a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old or onwards, this child has some sort of orientation from the home that he may not be easily adaptable in an adoptive home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. This is something you deal with every single day, right?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So maybe I may also want to add on the question that you've asked concerning why we have so many children in our CCIs. Like my colleagues have already said, we have some children who are in those institutions, but they shouldn't be there. The reason is they already have their own biological families. So some of the people take their children there for support, like in terms of school fees and such kind of assistance. But in reality, if we support these children back within their communities, the same thing that they go to seek at the CCI can be given when they're in the homes, in their own families.
Okay.
So if we undertake family tracing, which is quite big at my organization, it would be important because we'll be able to unearth where is this child from, who are the families, what are their needs, and then we'll be able to support them from that particular point.
Okay.
Also, in addition, I would like to also add that we already have a list of so many local parents who want to adopt children, but not all children who are institutions are adoptable. By that I mean, not every child that you find in an institution can go for adoption because, again, we have to understand their case. Some of them are just neglected, some of them are of parents who are in prison, some of them are just orphaned children, and we have to look for other alternatives and not necessarily consider, say, adoption as the first resort for them in their interest.
But then that makes adoption look really bad, what you say. It really makes it look really bad because I'm looking, for example, one of the child who is adopted. I'm sure that child was going to get the best kind of life, right? But still, in the eyes of authorities, it shouldn't have happened. That's because... Okay.
Like, it's important for them to be brought up in their own families so that we are protecting them.
Okay. There's so much dynamics, you know.
Okay.
Yes.
On that, he was adopted by foreigners. He felt, at that particular age, he started asking himself questions. Why am I with a white couple? Why am I? So that child became rebelled against the parents, and eventually he flew from, I think, Netherlands to this country, and he was looking for his biological
parents. Yeah.
You can imagine the havoc that was wreaked on that particular family. So to me, I would rather, if there are issues that are discovered when the kid is 4 years, 7 years, or at any particular age, the issues be sorted instead of waiting until the kid is a teenager or is 20 years, then he's, you have seen what is happening in Kakamega the other day. So it is important that these issues be dealt with at this particular time.
Okay.
And the interest of the child is not just wealth. It is the psychological trauma that the kid suffers when he discovers that actually he was stolen, and the parents who actually who have brought him up or her up are not actually the biological parents. I'd rather issues be dealt with. It is not all about wealth in this world.
Okay. Pauline, you agree?
Okay, yeah, I do agree. But remember, the Children's Act acts in the best interest of a child in all circumstances. The question I might ask is there a possibility that a child actually having a home but being mistreated or being carried in a certain way can actually be taken for adoption? The truth is there are circumstances where a child may be rescued from a mistreatment or where he's being sexually harassed, sexually mistreated, or in any other manner be placed for adoption. Yeah. So there are possibilities where a child can actually be rescued from a home because his safety is at risk for purposes of being adopted by a family where the court probably believes that this child, where the court believes that this child will be much safer, because the court's duty is to act in the best interest of the child.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Define this for us, adoption, guardianship, and fostering, all of them. Distinguish all those for us.
Fostering under Section 147 would be placing the child in any other person who is not a parent or a guardian for purposes of that person giving care and maintenance for this child.
Okay.
Adoption is giving, and fostering is not for life. It is given for a particular period of time. It can be given by a virtue of a court order. It can be given by virtue of an institution placing the child for a certain period of time. And once that particular period of time is over, this child must be returned to the home or wherever he is. And however, during the fostering period, the institution is under duty to supervise this particular parent and where the child is, to see, is the child well, is the child feeding well, is the child comfortable. When we talk about adoption, we are talking about giving parental responsibility of a child to another person. So this person is given a child as though he gave birth or she gave birth to this particular child in law. Biologically not, but in law. So he has all the obligations to care and make decisions relating to this particular child. A guardian would be equally to a foster because he is taking care of this child because maybe the parents are dead or the parents are so sick or the parents are being placed in prison or something. However, a guardian is not an adopter, does not get parental responsibility as though he gave birth to that particular child.
Okay. Wow, very interesting. Very interesting, because these are a lot of things that we overlook and we don't take them seriously. But just listening to you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm still wondering why children are so very much mistreated. I mean, it looks as though there's a lot of need for people to adopt children. That's what I'm getting. And I'm also looking at it in terms of there's a lot of hurdles to adopt a child. Then I'm looking back and wondering, how many stories do we hear about children who are mistreated, children who don't have homes, children whose parents are unavailable? And then I look at the way you're putting it, it looks so complex, but there's so much need to protect these children. I don't know if I'm the only one looking at it from that angle.
Maybe if I could say something in regard to that, putting it in very simpler terms, so that even the community and the society out there understands. In regards to foster care, for example, it is just like my colleague has said, it's temporary placement of a child. And then this child will later on go back to their families or to their relatives. But adoption, on the other hand, is permanent. It gives these rights and responsibilities to the adoptive parents.
Okay.
And so what we need to look at is base our decision on the interest of the child and the kind of a case the child is coming from. We have so many children in children homes who are either neglected, others are abandoned, others are lost. All these categories are put in place in regards to like Section 10 of the Children's Act. If we read it, we'll be able to see all these categories of children who are in need of care and protection. But alternative family care is not necessary for all of them. Because first of all, we need to look at first, can we trace the families of this child? Then this child will go back to their home. Therefore, will not need the alternative family care placement. If we need alternative family care placement, what comes first? Is this child in need of temporary placement or in need of permanent placement? If the child is in need of temporary placement, say their parents are in prison or something like that, then we shouldn't place such a child in adoption. Because when the parents come out, then what would we say in that case? So it basically revolves around the case of the child. And maybe on your question on...
Perhaps, wait, because I'd like to address that comprehensively, but I'm also told that we need to take a break. So as we take the break, CS Fred Matiang'i was supposed to hold a press conference by the betting control license stakeholders, and I'm told that he's speaking. So as we take the break, let's listen in to Fred Matiang'i.
Because if you come here and apply for a permit to do one thing, and then you end up doing another, surely you are breaking the law, and you do not expect that we would be smiling with you and persuading you around just because we want to be members of a respectable community of nations. Let us respect our country. That is the message I'm passing to all of us. We must respect our country and manage ourselves in a responsible manner. So from this day forward, we now must walk the path of order and the path of organization. Lastly, I promise that we also have to listen to each other, because the era of thinking that government knows everything is gone. We have to be humble enough to say that we actually don't know everything. And even if we want to grow the sector, we have to listen to others and listen to those of you, our colleagues, who have invested in the sector, who are in the sector. It's not as if you are here illegally. You are here legitimately. You pay taxes. You have gotten, licenses. This sector employs about 5,000 Kenyans. We appreciate that. And many of those Kenyans pay taxes. That is true. And so you are corporate citizens of our country. So much as we have challenges, we can also not turn around and behave in a rogue manner as a government. We have to listen to each other and talk to one another. And that is why I would like to urge that today we have a very deep and candid discussion one with another. We have proposed amendments to regulations, and so on. We would like to hear what you think. Where proposals are brought to us that are reasonable, we will not only listen to them, but we will accommodate them in the way in which we move forward. Where proposals we feel are not in the best interest of our country, then we will honestly tell you that we will not go by them, as it were. So let's listen to one another today. We are happy to get your comments. I have to report to this audience that I met with the Media Owners Association, with my colleague, the PS, and they made what I thought were fairly reasonable proposals to us about distinctions we need to do and how we need to structure the business and the regulations, as it were, so that we can look at price promotions, gaming, and so on, and segment them. They asked issues related to watershed hours and so on. I would like us to debate them, but we too will consult within government. So we come here also with the attitude of listening to one another, not entirely condemning the sector, as it were. We would like to listen to you, and let's candidly talk to each other respectively, because we respect you as investors in our country. And even if there are one or two of you who break the law, it's not all of you. Those who genuinely are interested in investment and those who are genuinely making a contribution to our economy and to our country, you deserve and should get our commitment, our support, and we should work with you. And we are going to do that. But you also need to understand, even as we do that, that we have a country to protect and we have a country to develop. And our country cannot be, some strange marketplace where you operate without rules, where you do what you please, where you are willing to make money, go and pay for football clubs in Europe, but you don't have money to pay taxes in Kenya. And when people ask you to pay taxes, you rush to court, you get an order. Say, argue about how you think you have been treated unfairly and so on and so forth. So it becomes an endless cat and mouse. For us, I need to tell you that cat and mouse game is not going to happen again. It's over. And my colleagues from the security agencies are sufficiently briefed. And from 1st of July, we expect that we would have genuine licenses in the sector. And all structures of government will be involved in this process. We will not do this alone. I would like to consult my colleagues at the NSAC. I would like to consult my colleagues in other structures of government before we finally do what we have to do. We have to do clean stuff. The business of what we have been doing, we will not go on with it anymore, where, as I told you, look at what the figures show, as it were. We have to be mindful of our society also. I don't think any one of us is happy about some of these statistics, and as we can't pretend about it. The repercussions of what we are doing are such that we cannot live with them in this manner. So we have to go about this. And for those of you, and you don't have to wait. You see, if you are here, you applied for a work permit to do something else, and you are now in this list, you don't have to wait for the deportation order. You can actually talk to General Kialanga here. He facilitates you otherwise. But otherwise, you know very well, I have no problem signing Muteshi. I would like to sign all those deportation orders today so that those who are affected leave the country tonight. Thank you.
the end of that press conference by Fred Matiang'i. Time now for a short break. When we come back, we'd like to ask specific questions about adoption. We'll also try and make it as easy as possible, not only for me, but for everyone. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The Matter Heart Run 2019 will happen on 25th May 2019 simultaneously in Nairobi, Mombasa.
And welcome back to NTV. Today, we are discussing issues of adoption, fostering, and guardianship. We're coming back to discuss that, but President Uhuru Kenyatta, at the end of last week, decided to extend the Huduma number registration, and straight on, you decided you're not going to register, you'll wait for the next deadline, which is fast approaching. Quite a number of issues, but they have taken this to your doorstep. They're coming to hospitals, public functions, schools, and all. And Bernardo Juang this morning is at a hospital in Rongo, that's in Migori County, where they're also doing the Huduma number registration. Bernard?
Well, thank you very much, Ken. We are here at Royal Level 4 Hospital in Rongo. Remember what's going on here. As you can see behind me, these are patients who the Huduma number official, that is government officer handling this process, are here today. They are moving in different hospitals just so as to register patients in the wards. Remember, it is a process that was supposed to end on 18th, that is Saturday, but the government saw it wise at least to extend it to 25th of this month. And what is going on in Rongo currently? The government here saying officers here saying that they have managed to register over managed to register over 97,000 people, and their target is 123, meaning they are almost hitting their target. And currently, I'm just going to talk to some of the patients here. I'm seeing is in the line. Just karibu hapa, pengine songa hapa karibu. Uko hapa siku ya leo, unahudumiwa kuregister huduma namba?
Okay, niko ndani ya hospitali katika Royal Medical Health Royal Referral Hospital. Kulingana na venye niko hapa, mimi ni mgonjwa na nilikuwa na uoga kwa sababu wakati wa huduma namba ilikuwa imeisha kitambo na nilikuwa pandani. Sasa kufika leo nimeona Mr. Dio mkuu amejaribu kuleta watu wa huduma mpaka wakati niregister leo. Nimeshukuru wakubwa zetu kama Chief Dande area na Chief Adika. Sasa
unaona itawasaidia namna gani?
Kwa huduma namba kama mimi nimesasikia ni kitu muhimu sana, kwa sababu itabeba vitu mingi kama namba ya ID, kama uko na driving license, maybe ukienda kununua udongo mali pengine uwezi nunua udongo bila huduma namba. Sasa mimi naomba wengine wajachukua wajaribu kuichukue muda unayoma.
Asante sana. I'll speak to the person in charge of this process here. Joe, here, karibu hapa. It is a process that it was supposed to end on 18th and it was extended, and today you are here targeting hospital. Why are you targeting hospitals today?
We are targeting the hospital because there are some people who are sick. They did not manage to the days that we are 45 days we put, but due to the mercy of our president who extended for 1 week, so we are seeing that it is good to go hospital by hospital. Today we are in the Royal Hospital to who did not get the opportunity, and we are going even to the clinics. Recently we were in Rongo Hospital, and we have registered those ones who are not able to reach where the centers are.
So tell us, how's the process? Are you hitting your target?
We are hitting the target because currently we have registered 97,000 and we were targeting 123,000. So it means that by the end of this week, by Saturday 6, we could have just managed to register those ones who are willing to register.
Well, I think Ken, I told you today is
Right, we're having trouble with Bernardo Juang, but he has finished his job. The registrations are now going to the hospital, and they have targets against 120. They've done over 90,000, which is a good number. Bernard reporting from Rongo. Let's come back to studio and talk about issues of adoption. Being educated here, seriously educated about issues I didn't know. So I know we've spoken about a lot of things, but I'd like to give specific example, unless, Wanjiku, you really wanted to finish your point. Yes.
What I was discussing earlier concerns the issue of adoption, in the sense that people think adoption is complex, it's difficult.
I think it's complex. You guys have made it look really difficult this morning.
But to demystify it, it's really not a rigorous process. all the people need to do who are interested in adopting is to visit Child Welfare Society of Kenya or the registered adoption societies, and they get the procedures from there. They just need to apply, fill the forms, and then there will be the process of matching with the child who is available for adoption, not just any child from the institutions, after which they will go to court after 3 months of bonding or placement period. And when they go to court, we get adoption orders after, say, 3 or 2 hearings based on how the case is. And once the adoption orders are granted, this parent will be able to get the adoption certificate and later on the birth certificate. So
With those statistics, how long would I have to wait?
For the process to complete?
Yes, because
actually,
he says 6 for 1.
Actually, it depends again. One thing that counts is, of course, the availability of the parent and your proactiveness towards the completion of the case. But all that in mind, it shouldn't take a local adoption 6 to about 1 year long. But all this while, you'll be having the child with you, so you don't even notice that the time is flying.
With you at home or still from?
No, what happens is after you've been vetted as suitable to adopt, you will be placed with the child.
Okay.
So then you will commence the legal process 3 months after you've been placed with this child. So all the while, as you go through the court process and everything, you already have the child with you.
Okay.
So it's not a rigorous process.
Okay.
And even in terms of cost, the government has really subsidized everything. Like for Child Welfare, which is a state agency, the whole process is free. But the other adoption societies charge, I'm sure they charge a substandard fee for their processes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Ken, I think I will agree with you that the society and the government needs to demystify adoption, and there ought to be a bit of civic education on probably through the children's officers, because in my language, where I come from, we don't even have words to describe adoption. We really don't have. And the words that are actually used is something like selling or buying a child, which is very, very, it causes a lot of stigma. So I agree with you. The government ought to invest in educating Kenyans such that the people who do not want to bring up their child because of one reason or another, the people who want to adopt children because of one reason or another, may understand the process. Again, I think it ought to be made free. It ought to be made free because once the issue of money comes in, the traffickers actually get a field day in getting people to pay. We need to really criminalize this business of actually getting money because you are assisting somebody to get a child.
Okay.
We end up getting children being bought. And finally, there's a missing link. The government has taken care of children who are with their families through the cash transfer program. An uncle, an auntie, or a grandparent is given 2,000 shillings every month to take care of the children. But the children who are actually not living with their families, mostly the extended family, and they're in homes, there's no money that is actually allocated by the government to take care of those children. And I think that is where probably the agency or like CWSK ought to come in and make sure that every single child who is not with their family, some sort of money is actually allocated to that child to avoid situations where these children are left at the mercies of donors. And every other day we are seeing a CCI being closed, children home closed, and we find disaster was happening inside that home.
Okay.
My position is that an adoption is a voluntary thing. There is no imposition of a parent to adopt a child. But that said, I don't actually think that the process is complicated. There is a lot of investigation, which I actually support because, I mean, the government is giving a stranger to a small child who is so helpless. It cannot just be made as easy as walking into a home and picking a child or getting a child who has been thrown on the street and bringing them into your family and voila, you have adopted. There has to be some investigation. Are you competent enough? Are you financially stable? Do you have some criminal records on you? Are you a person who can associate with the child? Yeah? And the child, where did the child come from? All these investigations must be done, which to the public it may look like it is complicated, but however, it is mandatory to the best interest of this particular child. Yeah? Okay. A child is a very helpless person being put in the family. Well, if he is mistreated, he may not even be in a position to know. I agree with my learned friend that we need civil education, yes, on adoption process. But again, adoption cannot be made as easy as ABC. No.
Okay. It has to be...
It has to be done to the latter to ensure that an adopting parent is competent and qualified to take care of a child.
Okay. I'd like to give you specific examples, and I'd like to invite your comments on this. I begin with 2 examples that are very prominent. Deputy President William Ruto walks into a function. He is told about the story of a young girl, pities the young girl, picks the child is now at William Ruto's home. Secondly, Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko, a child is shot, there's a bullet lodged in his head. He takes the child to the hospital. When the child leaves the hospital, he takes the child to his home. Let's get your comments on that. Let me begin with you, Njiko.
My view would be it's important to have these cases documented. Issues of philanthropy or even the processes that are proper, like if people just adopt normally or foster or even be guardians to these children, it's important for the cases to be documented. And therefore, it's important also to report the incidences to the Director of Children's Services, who already have a register, even for fostered children, so that the details of the children can be put in those documents. And then we'll be able to know how many children are fostered and who is fostering them.
Okay.
Yes.
What about these 2 specific examples?
I would still have a general comment around that in the same line. It's important to have the cases in the document.
But it's not recognized by law? These children, their parents can walk in and take them at any moment?
Well, like I talked about earlier, the issues of alternative family care are only either mainly through adoption, foster care, or guardianship. So it's important for whatever action we take to either fall within that, or whichever other arrangement there is, the DCS is important to have like the document of all the children who've been placed out in these various forms of alternative family care.
I don't know why you're reluctant to comment about the 2. Let me try the lawyers.
Let me say this, Ken. These gestures are very good, but the policy of the government, I think, and the experts on children welfare the world over is, it is better off to assist that child in his family setup.
Okay.
Because if you remove that child from the family setup, you give him a temporary, artificial sort of...
Why do you think it's temporary? I mean...
Temporary... that is what... let me finish. You give him a temporary... Then sometimes later, he probably has to go back to his home. If you actually want to assist, think the long term. Don't think the short term. Because what will happen with this child when he's 18 years, for example, if you live with him, what is happening to the real parents? Are they happy? They are happy in the short run that our kid is getting educated, is eating well, but what about the urge for parenting? What will they do with that particular issue? Will they now book an appointment to come and see their kid? Let us do this. It is important when our leaders and all of us who are blessed in wealth, and let us think the long term when you're dealing with children. Let us not think temporary.
Okay, but I think for them, they're thinking long term.
Do you want to take the legal steps of adopting that child, or do you want to be given guardianship? Do you want to be given foster, getting into a foster arrangement with the parents? What is the terms of the parent engaging the particular kid when he's in your parent? These are things that ought to be dealt with. But the issue of walking in, picking a kid and taking it to your kid and then giving the mother or the parents 10,000 shillings and your child, I don't think they are good for the kid in the long run.
Okay, which is not the case in this too. But still, it's interesting because do they have any legal rights? And to me, they're doing this out of the best interest probably for the child or something.
Let me say this, Ken, as my colleague will also comment on that.
Yes.
If somebody dies today and you have been taking care of a child to the extent that you are literally the parent, even if there's no legal documentation for that arrangement, that kid has actually the right to come and claim part of your estate by saying that he was a dependent on you.
Okay.
So at the end of the day,
and it's legally enforceable.
Yes, it is legally enforceable.
Okay.
So that can happen, but it would be better off if actually the whole arrangement is documented.
It's documented. Pauline, this is not untraditional. Perhaps we are only seeing these two examples because they are prominent. But we have kids who have grown up in their rich uncles' houses. For example, when I was in lower primary, I stayed with my uncle until such a time that I went to high school, right? So it usually happens, except these two cases are very prominent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to stress to this. Under the Children's Act, the only way you can have legal parental responsibility of a child as though the child was yours is through adoption. So if anyone has picked a child out there from a home, from an uncle, from a relative, from the park, thinking that the mere fact he has stayed with this child for more than a year, a month, or whatever period, you are illegally possessing that child.
Okay.
Yeah. The only way you can legally have a child as though it were yours when you have not given birth is through adoption. And an adoption is only given but by not any other court but the High Court.
The High Court.
And there are procedures that have to be followed. If you have not followed that particular procedure, you are just fostering a child, or you are a guardian, and a guardian is given under court order.
Okay.
So if whatever examples you've given where someone walks in and takes a child, I do not know whether those people went through the legal process of adoption, but if they did not, they are only guardians of fostering of these particular children. It is just as good as somebody who is getting funds from abroad to take care of a child here. Yeah.
Okay.
That person abroad has not fostered. It's only that in this circumstance the child has been placed into that particular home.
Okay.
Yeah.
More examples. What happened to a couple? Before I go to that, let me speak to you. I hear or I understand that a man cannot be allowed to adopt a young female child if he's unmarried. Apart from the other qualifications, that is one. It's not going to happen. Same correct. To a female, right?
Yes, that's correct. For obvious reasons, I don't even have to get into that. You don't want to expose a young girl to a person who is not biologically related to that particular person. So the law says that you've got to be married.
Okay.
If you, as a man, you want to adopt a girl child.
Okay.
And the vice versa.
Okay.
Except that for ladies, there are exceptional circumstances.
That they can be allowed to adopt a male child.
A male child, yeah?
Okay.
And those are actually well documented in law.
Okay, yes. So it's possible there are exceptional circumstances. All right, I'm back with you, but Zacchaeus Masaba is on standby right now. Zacchaeus, good morning. Not a good morning for Mijungu, because we understand that a 7-year-old child has been stabbed to death. All right, challenge with Musabe's connection. Let's come back to the studio if we manage to get him. But we understand that is Matungulu. If I'm not wrong, there is a 7-year-old child who's been stabbed to death. We'll try and get the details as soon as we get Musabe back. But let me give specific examples again away from that. If a couple have a child and they are divorced, right? And this lady goes on to be married to another man. What does the man become to the child?
Please repeat the question.
If a couple, they're divorced and they have a child, and the lady goes on to get married to another man, and this man who left this lady is not claiming the child at all, what happens to the relationship between the new man and the child? Do you have to go to court? Do you have to formalize it?
Adopted or biological parent?
No. That was biological child. Yes.
I think if this man wants to acquire the child, the new man wants to acquire the child as though the child was his, then he has to go through the adoption. But he will not do it alone. He has to. They have to do it together with the wife. Because once he adopts alone, then he's taking away their parental rights from any other person.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are different types of adoption. And maybe we forgot to say that you can not only adopt from a children's home. You can also adopt within the family. You can adopt a child for a dead relative. You can adopt a child for whatsoever reason, so long as they are within the law and the court is convinced. So the scenario you are giving is a kinship adoption, where the child is being adopted by the stepfather. Yeah?
Yes.
Yes. So yes, it is possible that such a child can be adopted. However, the biological father of that particular child must give consent to that adoption, because adoption is not in the process of snatching children from their biological parents to fulfill other people's needs. So unless and until this biological father gives consent for that particular adoption, then that adoption cannot happen. The new man will continue remaining the child's stepfather, and that is all.
Okay, Mijungu?
I agree with what my colleague says, because the need for when the stepfather is adopting the child, the biological mother has to be there, so that when the adoption order comes out, it reads as both of them being the parents. And in case the biological father does not consent, it's important to understand why, so that you're able to know the reasons as to why he's refusing to that. And if he does refuse and he's like of sane mind and everything, then that adoption cannot go through.
Okay.
Because we must ensure that his consent is available.
Okay.
Just one final point on that issue. Just because people have separated or they have actually divorced does not mean that the rights of the father to continue being a parent to the kid moves.
But divorces are usually very messy.
Yes. That is correct, yes. And that is why in most cases the visitations rights, if these children are of a tender age, most likely they will be with the mother. But the father is actually given chances, opportunities to visit the kids, or the kids to visit the father. The only time that a stepfather will come in is probably when the biological father is nowhere to be found. If he gives permission, well. If he doesn't give permission, there are times when the stepfather and the biological mother can go to court and say that under the circumstances, these kids are better off being adopted by the stepfather, because the biological father has 1, 2, 3 problems.
Okay. Last example, you get married to a lady. Nowadays we know men raise a lot of children who are not theirs, right? Obviously, it's the mother of the child, and then you know the father of the child. And you get married to this lady believing that that's your child. And then years down the line, when the baby is 10 years old, you discover this is not your child. And you decide not to sue for fraudulent paternity. But then, because of that circumstances, you have to let the lady go. What becomes of this man to this child? For 10 years, you've assumed he's your child.
I think the law, once you assume a certain responsibility as a father to this particular child, it is not going to be easy to just shed off those responsibility one day, because you have discovered that this is actually not your biological child. While the law will permit you probably to divorce because of adultery, those responsibilities cannot just be shed that way. Having said that, this is going to be more of a social, psychological and psychiatric problem, more than a legal problem. And the cases that I've come across, the advice is always get a professional help, because just because this is not your biological child, like the situation where you actually adopt a child who is not yours and you bring him up, and you probably even become closer than a biological child, where the law will permit you to share the relationship with the mother, it does not allow you to just kick out the kid.
Okay.
The kid is actually innocent.
Okay.
And the court will make the decision based on the welfare of that particular kid.
Pauline, just briefly, we are coming back to this discussion, but can the child enforce that right also when they are grown?
The right to...
The child. Can they enforce that right, that I believed you were my father and you're taking care of me?
Of course, it is an act of fraud, yeah?
Yes.
Because you're misleading two people to believe that they are biologically related. And
yes, the father and the child.
Yes, the father of the child believing this is my child, and the child believing this is my father. Of course, as you say, it's a social problem, but again, the law, yes, will say that this man acquires parental responsibility. But I like the way you ask, then can he be considered as an adopted parent? According to the adoption laws, no, he cannot be considered an adopted parent because he has not gone through the procedure of acquiring this child.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm coming back with the discussion. Now, KEPSA and the Multi-Sectoral Forum Transport Sector are talking about fight against corruption. Let's head there and just listen in briefly. We'll be back with the discussion.
To be reduced. as these not only contribute to unnecessary delays, but are also present as opportunities for extortion of drivers by ill-meaning law enforcement officers. We welcome the Inspector General Harry Mutyambai for his recent decision to reduce the number of roadblocks by 50%. The implementation of this directive will have multiple wins, including increased efficiency of transport system and reduce the cost of doing business. I will now go to National Transport and Safety Authority. The role of the National Transport and Safety Authority in improving road safety and accessibility cannot be understated. We as the transport sector give our full support to the National Transport and Safety Authority in fulfilling its mandate and ask that all road users abide by the National Transport and Safety requirements for their sake and for the sake of their fellow road users. We must all also appreciate that compliance not only scales down to prevalence of bribery and other forms of graft, but also, and more importantly, reduces the risk of injury and loss of life through road carnages. We commend the National Transport and Safety Authority for embracing the use of technology in carrying out its duties. The National Transport Management Systems and roll out of the Smart Driving License are major steps towards efficient service delivery while reducing occurrences of corruption-related incidences. However, in the spirit of slaying the dragon, that is corruption, we also ask that NTSA ensures observance of the law in executing its mandate. We ask that the National Transport and Safety Authority take a firm and bold position against corruption, and without fear or favor, hold to account all its officers found guilty of engaging in corrupt practices. We further ask National Transport and Safety Authority follow strict guidelines in SACCO registration, which offer the SACCO shall only be registered if they have a fleet of 30 or more vehicles. Adherence to this and all other guidelines that regulate the transport sector will restore order, increase efficiency, reduces cases of corruption within the sector. There has been cases of issuance of motor vehicle licenses outside the normal procedures. Not only does this corrupt practice contribute to the prevalence of crime within the country, but also weakens efforts to fight terrorism. As is evidenced during the recent Dusit attack, where the vehicle associated with the attack had an identical registration plate with other vehicles. We ask that the National Transport and Safety Authority tighten its belt in regards to the matter of vehicle licensing and ensure that double registration becomes a thing of the past. There have been cases of driving schools paying premiums to ensure that their students secure driving licenses. This unlawful practice has contributed to the increases of road accidents owing as unqualified drivers gaining access to our roads. We ask for the safety of all road users and for the sake of the fight against graft that NTSA ensures that no driving license is acquired illegally and that such licenses be acquired to accredited driving schools. Lastly, we recommend the introduction of accredited private inspection centers and garages to carry out motor vehicle inspections to allow the National Transport and Safety Authority to exercise its oversight and regulatory mandate. Thank you.
Right, to the end of that press conference, we are having a good discussion right here on adoption. We have a few minutes on the clock, and I'd like to conclude. I don't know if we should give more examples, or we just conclude on my example, because on the fathers, right? What happens? Pauline, did you answer that? What happens to this father?
I think
in terms of even responsibility.
In terms of responsibility, the courts, remember, the children, matters relating to the children and the Children's Act purely relate in the best interest of the child. So regardless of the scenario that you may give us, Ken, the court is asking itself, what is the best interest of this particular child? So the high possibilities are, regardless of the scenario and what has happened, the man will be mandated to care for the child.
You can't be mandated to care for the child. I mean, what will they use to enforce it?
The court's eye is that you have already acquired parental responsibility. Remember, we are looking at the best interest of the child. The child needs education. The child needs food. The child needs shelter. The child needs
clothing. What if
clothing.
I countersue?
Yeah? You can countersue the mother for damages in a civil suit, but in the best interest of the child, which will be the duty of the court, you will still be obliged to do so. But in the likely event that the child's parent is there, the child's father is there, then he might also be mandated to take over parental responsibility, where yours then will be offloaded from
and
him.
can you claim permanency? For example, can you claim now permanency and say, because I've been misled to believe this now?
It could be a ground for you to adopt.
It could be a ground, okay.
My take on the whole issue would be looking at it from the social aspect and the moral aspect, in as much as that doesn't sound popular. It's important to look at how will this child grow. Yes, you've realized that you've been raising a child who's not yours, but at the back of it all, think of now this child. How will the needs he or she has be met? If that is addressed, then you can always look at it from other angles. There's also the issue of mediation, which is very important, where we can just have the two parties, say the parents, who may come together and look for a solution in a social context, not necessarily from a legal aspect.
So what happens to the biological parent? Can he come that late in time?
If he's known, he has the right to, because he's the biological father of this child. So again, all that can be looked at if all the parties are present on a case-to-case basis.
Okay.
But then again, centering all the discussions on the interest of the child.
Ken, this is not an issue of black and white. Yeah. There is a lot of gray areas in between. My take is that if at some point, say in a marriage, it is discovered that the father is really not the biological father of this kid, he was actually misled.
Or kids, we have cases of 3, only 1, or even none, 5,
so
none.
If it is so discovered, yeah, the responsibility of being the father does not end there by that discovery, say for example from DNA test. If you want to shed that responsibility, you have to go to court. Okay. And the court can actually refuse to release you. Mostly it will, probably after referring you for social psycho support. But it is not automatic that you'll be told, go away, you are no longer responsible for these particular kids. And in terms of the biological father coming in, a good number of the times he may be told that, I'm sorry, it is not in the best interest of this child or these children for you actually to play a role in their life. And I think there's a new jurisprudence that is emerging where two different people can actually play a role. The father who has actually brought up the kid for 10 years or 15 years, and the biological father who comes to know about it when the kid is 15 years. It is not impossible for both of them to actually play a certain role.
The only reason a court will force you to be responsible is when it's your child. That's why when you go to a children's court, the first thing that they'll do, they'll ask you to either dispute parentage or accept, right?
Yes.
Once you accept, they move to the next stage. If you dispute it, they go also to the next stage, which is let's determine this.
Which tells you that the law sometimes is not interested in the DNA. It is, if you say, yes, I want to take up responsibility, you're not even going to go for DNA. The court will, is Ken Mijungu the right person?
If Ken accepts.
Yes.
Yes.
If I dispute, having accepted, they do not even go for DNA because there's no dispute.
Because exactly.
So a person, despite not being the biological parent, can actually assume responsibility.
Which is true, but the only reason the court forces you with that responsibility is because you have accepted.
Yes.
If you decline, They cannot force
cannot
you.
force you.
Exactly. So if they cannot force you, if you discover they can discharge. Anyway, that's
if you
that's
discover
just,
much later,
yes, that's besides the
it is like a deceleration lane. Eh?
Yes.
You cannot just walk away on day one.
Okay, yeah, it's true. All right, so we have spoken about adoption, and we need to simplify this even as we look at the clock. We have a few minutes. Take us through what someone who wants to adopt goes through first. You have determined that you want to adopt. You're a single lady. Let me say you are Caroline Mutoko. She adopted, right? It's public, so I'll talk about it. What is the first thing that she does?
The first thing would be, as you say, if you have the interest, to visit a registered adoption society or child welfare, because child welfare is a SADC, it's not an adoption society. So they have the mandate to undertake adoptions on behalf of the government for the registered adoption societies as well. So there is usually things, let me call them things, or provisions or requirements that they're supposed to have. For instance, there is the application forms which parents fill to express that you want to adopt, in which there are many questions there that are asked. For example, your name, the number of people you live with, where you stay, those kind of, that kind of information is required. Then there are also other supportive documents, like for example, a letter from the chief, so that we may be able to know where is this person from, and does the chief acknowledge that the person is from there, for purposes of even tracing and basically knowing where the child will stay. And then also the issue of getting a medical report from the parents, so that you get to know, is this a parent who is capable of exercising their responsibilities as parents? And if they have a medical issue, can the medical issue be addressed? And so, like, we have parents who are living, say, with HIV and AIDS, and they may find it difficult to come forward and adopt because they assume that they are not qualified. But the issue is, once that is known, then they can be given the support they need, or if they're like taking medication for it, for the condition, then they can be allowed to adopt based on how they're managing the whole issue. Okay. Then the issue of finances come into play as well. Not because you want to know how much, say, you're earning and say qualify you as suitable because of your finances. We just want to know, are you capable of just bringing out the basic needs, like buying unga, for example, for the child, buying a pen and a book for the child. So the finance issue shouldn't be looked at as a thing that disqualifies parents from adopting. Then there are other documents as well, like a letter from the church or from your place of worship, alongside other documents. So when this parent is...
What if you're in a atheist, you don't go to church?
Well, it's important to know this child who's adopted, what kind of moral background
so you can
be
disqualified on that ground of not belonging to any denomination?
It will not be a disqualification per se, but then the people will understand, the people processing the adoption will understand that this child will be brought up in this particular religious way.
So
because it's important for you to know that where will this child be. For example, even have children who are given out for adoption and their parents had expressed interest that they should be brought up as Christians. So for example, if you yourself say you are not Christian, then it wouldn't be in the interest of the child to be placed with you.
I think that is one form that the lawyers should get out of that checklist.
So
yeah, because it's discrimination. It's just like asking you in a public form that from what tribe are you, you know?
No, I think if you look at it from the interest of the child, look at it from the child's point of view. That's why I'm saying everything has to be child-centered. You need to know how will this child be brought up. It's important for social reasons. And so alongside other documents, the applicant brings this to the adoption society. And so when they are brought, there is usually a committee that sits to approve all the applications that have been brought. The committee is comprised of counselors, social workers, lawyers, and other professionals. So when the application is vetted and is seen as suitable, then a child will be matched for this parent. So it's not the parent who will go to the children's home and identify a child.
And say, I want that child. No,
it doesn't work like
You're
that.
matched.
Yes, there's a matching process.
There are cases where the parent is allowed to...
The parent will specify, like they will say, I want a female child aged 10 years or 2 years or whatever years. But then again, the issues of matching have to be considered because, like I said, not all children who are in institutions can be adopted. Because if you go to choose for yourself, you may like a certain child whose parent may be is in prison, for instance. So that matching process has to be there. So when the matching happens, then the parent will be called to go and see how the child is and maybe see how they kind of relate as the initial response. Then later on, there will be the bonding process, and later the child will be placed with the applicant for a period as required by law for 3 months, under which the adoption society is supervising and seeing how the child is doing, how is the parent doing, is the parent okay, are the needs of the child being met, alongside other assessments which are done. After that point, that's the point at which the applicant is now supposed to start the legal process.
Is there mischief in the 3 months? Is there mischief?
Not necessarily, because I think when we look at how they relate, if the child doesn't bond with the family, because it happens in some
take them
cases,
out.
the child will be withdrawn because that's the essence, again, of the bonding process.
Okay.
So when the court process starts, say, after 3 months upon placement, this parent will be able to either decide, do they want to be represented by an advocate or do they want to represent themselves in court?
Okay.
There's a reason why they choose the self-representation, because they see some lawyers, not all of them, are expensive and they may not be able to afford.
Okay.
So then we as child welfare give them the training that they need to equip them with the skills they need to go to court. And we find that the judges at the High Court, most of them are very friendly. Even they talk like even the languages that the parents understand, Kiswahili and all that. And so it's a friendly environment for the parent. So at that point, the Director of Children's Services will be required to do a report after the first day in court, whereby there's a person called a guardian ad litem who looks at the interest of the child during the whole court process, and their role ends at the termination of the court process, at the provision of the adoption orders. After that guardian is appointed, then the Director of Children's Services will be required to file an independent report on the whole process. Then, of course, the Adoption Society will have previously prepared a report for the child and declare the child adoptable and say that the parents are fit. Then there will be a hearing date in court, where the judge will look at these reports that are presented, give a ruling or set a date for the ruling, and then after which the adoption orders are obtained. Then from there, they can process the adoption orders to get a birth certificate.
Okay.
Yes.
Two quick things. One, at that first stage, what happens if the adopter withdraws? And secondly, one of the reasons we ran that feature is because some of those reports were obtained fraudulently. What if at that first stage it's discovered a report from the society probably was obtained fraudulently to write a favorable report? Can either party withdraw? Can the welfare withdraw their child? Can this parent say, because of this, I'm not interested anymore? Or like she was giving us an example, a prospective parent just discovers at the far end that they are now pregnant, because some of them do it as a need because they can't have their own. What if they discover, can they withdraw? Or now again, you look at the best interest of the child over that period?
Before the adoption order is issued, anything can happen in between. The child can withdraw because they are not permanently with the parents, because the adoption order is not granted. So should we know cases of, say, abuse of the child, then we'll not just keep quiet and let the child continue being abused in such an environment. On the other hand, there's the issue of professionalism, as you've raised. There are some reports that are done which are not, say, properly done, like we saw in the documentary that you projected. But all the same, we urge that it's important to have professionals in the field of adoption. In most countries, which I would think would be a best practice, we have social workers handling adoption processes at the social level. And for Kenya right now, we do not have a professional body per se that governs the field of social work. Therefore, as child welfare, we are pushing towards having a body that legalizes all the activities so that somebody is found responsible. If, for example, I'm a social worker and I present a report to court which is obtained fraudulently, then there are actions against such kind of a person. Yeah. So the process again goes on until, say, the adoption orders are given.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Good enough. We have a few minutes on the clock, and as you comment, I want you to look at the do's, and then Pauline will end by telling us the don'ts and the things a prospective adopter should have in mind, even as they go for the child.
Okay. One of the things that your documentary yesterday brought out is that adoptive parents ought to go a little further beyond just being told that there's a child who is available for adoption. They need to ask for the history, a bit of the history background, so that they don't get themselves into a lot of problems. If they are told that the child was abandoned, I think it is important that they get to know the history. What led to where the child is at this particular time. The other thing that the adoptive parents ought to know is as Penelope has indicated here, is that until the final order of adoption is made, it is possible for the child to be withdrawn. So, for example, the report was that the child was abandoned, and then during the 5th month, the parents actually come. DNA tests are carried out, and it is discovered that this child was switched in a hospital, for example. It is important for them to be psychologically prepared that until the final adoption is actually, orders are given, that the child might be withdrawn from them. And then just one more perhaps not really related. This country is actually wasting so much money dealing with abortions. Serious money. Either charging people in court for criminal offenses or secondary medical. I think it is important and it is high time that the Children's Department creates an interface with the police and the health sector, so that instead of these things happening, let people who are looking for abortions, which are actually criminal in this country, be advised that there's another way out of this particular problem. It is possible for you to carry the pregnancy to term, and the kid can actually be adopted. This is an area that the government ought to invest in.
Okay. Pauline.
On the don'ts, I think the first thing is please use a professional. Not all lawyers in Kenya are family lawyers, and not all family lawyers are lawyers that have the capability of doing an adoption case. It is a unique branch of law. So ensure that you have a lawyer, and a lawyer who has dealt with adoption cases before, and not just any other lawyer.
But if you go to a lawyer, Pauline, and ask them, they will straight tell you, yes, I can do this. How will you do that? They'll agree to it.
Most likely the children, the adoption societies and the children's home will tell you the lawyers that to go to.
Okay.
Some people will insist, no, I want my lawyer who helped me purchase property. Yeah? That particular lawyer may not be in a position to help you do an adoption. It is another branch of law that is totally different from what your lawyer is. Okay. So the adoption society will tell you, go and use this particular lawyer. Number two, don't be in a hurry. Yeah? Because when you are in a hurry, then documentations will be left out. Documentations will be acquired that are faulty, like what we saw. Yeah? Like a police officer saying we did an investigation and we confirmed, yet clearly there was no investigation.
And the police knew that the mother was in prison.
Yeah, you see?
And would get out of
Yeah, that's a hurry. Probably the parent is telling the lawyer, I want this adoption right now. Don't be in a hurry. Ensure you go through the process so that at the end you are clear that I went through the whole process, and you know, I have no particular doubt. The second one is ask questions to your lawyer. Yeah, don't just be at it's not like buying a land case. You say, so have we done? Has the seller come back? No. Ask questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Where did this child come from? Yeah.
Okay.
What happened? What you know? Ask the kind of questions to your lawyer so that you understand, you know, where this particular process is, and have reasons for adoption. Why am I adopting?
Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, ladies. Pauline, thank you very much, Gishinge, and thank you, Wanjiku, for coming and sharing. We are very educated this morning, right? We're very educated, and all the best. Have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching NTV today. Right after this is NTV Sasa, and I see it's an all-men team this afternoon. Have a good morning, and see you at 1 o'clock with an update of all the stories making headlines at that time.
This is NTV.